After this weekend's winter storm, another threat is on the way as we push towards Tuesday and Wednesday, with another one right on its heels out of Wednesday and into Thursday of the week ahead. This video has all the details on the winter mayhem ahead, including the temperature forecasts. This video is going to go one by one breaking down each of the winter weather threats as we go into the pattern ahead, and I wanted to briefly start out by overviewing the winter weather threat that's going on right now, Saturday, February 8th, and then as we push through tonight and into our Sunday, February 9th, we've been seeing snow over parts of the upper Midwest, as you can see in that area where I forecasted it on this custom graphic, and it's expected to continue moving towards parts of the Northeast U.S., while parts of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic see some ice. Most of the forecast data I talked about in previous video updates or live streams for this storm has remained the same, but it does look like a bigger area here through east central and southeast New York, stretching over into parts of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and then southern Vermont and New Hampshire will experience upwards of 6 to 8 inches of snowfall out of this storm, while areas further back towards the south and west towards the mid-Atlantic get more like an ice storm event out of this particular system. Again, make sure you're tuning into my previous videos and live streams by checking the links in the description if you want to see what I was forecasting for the ice and all those other details, but the snow is what is uptrended, and that's why I wanted to briefly mention this before moving on into the main two winter storms that are going to be the topic of discussion for today's video. That being said, though, that leads me into this next custom graphic, giving an overview here of the next winter storm that's likely as we go into the week ahead, especially as we go out of Monday, February 10th, and then into a lot of the day, February 11th, and into that night time frame. We're going to watch an origin zone back into parts of the Mountain West out of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming in particular, and then we're going to see this winter storm come out of the west, bring some snow from parts of the Central Plains all the way over to the Mid-Atlantic coastline, ice in between that, and an area of rain and even some stronger storms that we could see down towards parts of the lower Mississippi Valley, deep south, and the southeast. Before we break down the timing and the forecast totals of snow and other impacts with that particular system, here's a little bit of a closer look at that snow track for around that February 11th time frame. Light snow possible anywhere from parts of Nebraska and South Dakota and Kansas through parts of Iowa, Missouri, and then the southern parts of states like Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. A lot of Kentucky could see some snow on Tuesday, while we see that snow band pick up to a more moderate rate. Best chance for that as we come out of the Ohio Valley and then move over into places like West Virginia, Maryland, and into parts of Delaware and New Jersey. The southern New England zones could also see some light snow and then ice on the south side of that, as far to the south as Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, parts of Tennessee, and into North Carolina. With that overview for this storm now behind us, let's go ahead and jump into the overall timing that you can expect here and the impacts moment by moment using this GFS model and what it's projecting, with some of those impacts likely showing up as early as into our Monday, February 10th, into the afternoon and evening hours. It looks like we're going to be seeing some snowfall energy, as I mentioned earlier, transferring out of parts of Montana and Wyoming, and that could lead to some light snowfall ejecting on out here into parts of the central and maybe even north central plains, as well as the Midwest as we get into our Monday late afternoon into the evening hours. That will include parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri possibly seeing snow around this time, with rain back down to the south side of that picking up, and then it will start to expand eastward out of places like Texas, Oklahoma, and into surrounding zones as we get out of Monday evening and into the overnight. Here you go. You can see the progression of the storm as this model indicates it. By the time we go from 10 p.m. Monday night to 10 a.m. Tuesday morning, a lot of our energy transferring its way over to that moderate snow band that's likely going to especially start to get itself together coming out of Kentucky and then over into places like West Virginia and Virginia, as well as Maryland and Delaware, where snow will continue to slide east in these zones and pick up closer to the coast throughout the day. That's why I showed on that graphic earlier that the best chance for moderate snow accumulations will be in those zones. Meanwhile, back towards the southern side of this storm, I think as we get through the day here on our Tuesday, we're going to continue to watch these storms that come out of places like Texas, southeast Oklahoma, Arkansas, and into Tennessee, because as they slide to the south and east, we couldn't rule out that potential for some isolated severe weather down there in the deep south and lower Mississippi Valley. That snow back into parts of Kansas and Missouri will likely weaken down even if it still exists by the time we get into our Tuesday afternoon. But as you can see, most of the storm falling apart on its western end, and we're really just looking at that front sliding east by the time we get into our Wednesday morning. Still snow possible over the mid-Atlantic, and then rain extending back down with maybe even some thunderstorms continuing into the overnight night, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, over a lot more of those deep south and even the southeast states like Georgia and the Carolinas. By the time we get out of Wednesday early morning and then into the day Wednesday, we're now turning our attention to that next winter storm, which is literally going to be right on this one's heels, and I'll break that one down with all of the latest information in just a minute. In terms of the forecast snowfall for this system, nothing is finalized obviously by this point in time, but I'm going to give you a look at some blended guidance here that does a pretty good job of being conservative while showing the areas that will have the best chance for those heaviest snowfall totals out of this fairly lower to moderate end winter storm that's going to impact parts of the country as we go out of the early to the mid parts of this week. Obviously, you can see there back into parts of Idaho, Montana. From Sunday going into Monday, we're going to watch some snow into some of those zones. Very light in many cases there, and the same will go with any snow that we see in this region of the Central Plains. More than likely, just a dusting to a couple inches in any spot in Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, over into parts of southern Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri, where we see any winter weather into our Monday. Then from there, we start to see that main corridor that's going to get at least that light to moderate snow pickup out of southeast Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into southern Ohio, and then Kentucky and West Virginia, where at least a dusting to a few inches of snow will be possible in a lot of these zones, especially as you see those deeper grays turning into the blues. The best chance for more notable accumulations out of this system is where I put that moderate tag on my custom graphic earlier. By the time we go out of Tuesday into our Tuesday night and into early Wednesday, best chance for those snowfall totals picking up will be where we see these deeper blues in West Virginia, into Maryland, Delaware, and the Jersey Shores, where right now current forecast model guidance is indicating anywhere from around 2 to 5 inches of snow in a lot of those blue zones. We could even pick up at least a dusting up there towards New York City, and then the storm will be out of here, and we're on to that next one deeper into next week. By the way, before we do talk about that next winter storm, I did want to point out the fact that as we go out of Tuesday and then into the early part of our Wednesday, there will be some significant thunderstorm activity that could not only bring that isolated severe weather threat, but also isolated flooding out of parts of eastern Texas, into Arkansas, Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and then up into Tennessee and North Georgia. I don't think flooding is going to be widespread, but with a lot of these zones in the oranges picking up at least 1 to 2.5 inches of rain with locally higher amounts, we could certainly see isolated to scattered in flooding along with those heavier thunderstorms, so be on the lookout for some of those impacts, again, especially late through the day Tuesday as this continues to train over some of the same areas. That's just round number 1 for the weekdays of next week, though. Here's a look at my custom graphic for that next winter storm. The first one I made on this one that's likely, especially as we go out of February 12th, which is Wednesday, and then into Thursday, February 13th. We could even see impacts linger into the 14th over the far eastern U.S. from this, but this looks more expansive. You can see it there. A big swath of snow likely from the Central Plains into some areas that have not seen too much so far this winter into the Midwest, including maybe Chicago, snow into the interior Northeast, but a troublesome ice combat area between your rain and storms and that snow that could become a problem. And then speaking of those storms, down there towards the deep south into the southeast, more of a prolonged event for flooding and possibly significant severe weather could come out of this system. So be on the lookout for that. By the way, here is a closer look at that snow track that's specifically going to impact parts of the Central Plains coming into the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast during that time frame. For now, I'm projecting moderate snow from Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, into parts of Illinois, southern Wisconsin, through a lot of Michigan, northern Indiana, and then over there through all of the interior Northeast zones, including New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And then ice on the south side of that, including a lot of the rest of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, into Ohio, and then over there into the mid-Atlantic. Let's go ahead and time things out so that you can see how this winter storm is currently expected to look around that time frame. Alright, here we are. We're going to go ahead and jump into it with the GFS model and overall what you can expect out of this system based on current guidance. This is not a final forecast, but just an overview of what to expect, and it all looks like things are going to pick up literally on the tail end of our first winter storm of the work week. By the time we go overnight Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, new low pressure forming, coming out of parts of the Rockies where we could see some heavy snow in a place like Colorado, and then starting to move on out here, ejecting into parts of the central and south central plains through the day on Wednesday. It looks like with this ejection, we're going to watch at least, as I'm forecasting, moderate snow here over parts of Nebraska, especially the southern part of Nebraska, into a lot of northern and eastern Kansas, parts of northern Missouri, and then down into some extent of southern Iowa. This could be heavier if this continues to uptrend, but for now we're calling for moderate snow there. And then it looks like at the minimum, some rain and thunderstorms that could elevate a flood threat by this point in time, as we will have already been seeing rounds through Tuesday from that first system down here into parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. As we go through the day Wednesday, low pressure expected to pivot to the north and east, and that could extend whatever snowfall rate we're seeing into parts of Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa and northern Missouri, pivoting eastward and starting to include parts of Wisconsin into Illinois, northern Indiana, and parts of southwest Michigan, including Chicago, Milwaukee, into Fort Wayne, Indiana. Some of these zones picking up possibly one of the bigger snows of the entire winter so far. It has not been very active in these particular zones. A lot of winter storms have danced around the southern Lake Michigan vicinity. This could be the big one of the winter for these zones if this continues to uptrend, so we'll be watching that forecast, but also watching the mess of thunderstorms between the lingering moisture from the last winter storm and then this new one bringing up moisture and instability into parts of the deep south and parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. I think some level of severe weather threat will develop through late Wednesday in some of these zones. It could continue through the night while pushing east, even as far to the north as places like Tennessee and maybe into a place like Kentucky. As if that's not enough, you can also see some winter weather already trying to get going Wednesday evening on this model into parts of the mid-Atlantic, and that's going to be with that warm front that could cause a mess moving into the northeast into the day on Thursday. Current forecast would be that by Thursday morning, we've got snow wrapping up but still heavy into some parts of especially Michigan there in the Great Lakes vicinity, rain extending back down through the south side of this storm, and possibly some stronger thunderstorms down through the southern Appalachians and then into parts of the Gulf Coast and southeast, and then along the warm front that's lifting north and helping to warm these areas for the storms back to the south. Snow and ice pushing further north, and it's really probably going to be an interior northeast event with this type of snow look. As you can see, the low pressure system really just keeping it snowy only in interior New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Even if we start with snow, probably transitioning to just ice or rain with this kind of event if you're down closer to the coast, but breezy in a lot of zones as all of this precipitation moves through the northeast quadrant of the U.S. on our Thursday. Thursday afternoon, possibly still some stronger thunderstorms rolling down here towards the Carolina coast and the eastern part of the Gulf Coast there. And then it looks like we're going to see this storm out of here by Thursday into Friday. And then look at that. Could we see another one by the weekend? That'll be a story for another time. By the way, that winter storm that I just discussed at the end of those winter weather discussions, they're the one that's coming Wednesday into Thursday, that will have the potential for some of that flooding and severe weather on its south side. We'll have some of those heavier snow totals. All of those specific details I'll pinpoint more in a future video. But for now, let's talk about temperatures as always, like we do at the end of every video, starting here in the near term, and then we'll also talk about those trends into the week ahead. Here we go, finishing out the weekend, Sunday, February 9th, 2025. Warm down here in the southeastern part of the U.S., and this is going to be a trend. A lot of spots that are in the 60s and 70s, or maybe even trying to get towards the low 80s Sunday in parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, over into Georgia and the Carolinas. Getting close to record warmth where you see those boxes and maybe even trying to break those record highs. These are going to be the spots that are warm all week, whereas here up north, just expect this cold to expand as we go deeper into the week, already teens and 20s. And these are your maximum daytime highs as temperatures are going to be well below average Sunday and beyond across this northern tier. Here we go into Monday. Look at that, staying in the negative digits into parts of Montana and North Dakota being projected as we get into our Monday afternoon. A little bit milder. Let's talk about some of these 20s and 30s, a big swath of those into parts of the Midwest over to the Ohio Valley for your Monday afternoon. And then again down here, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, over to the southeast, lots of spots 60s and 70s Monday. Those are your two near-term days I want to talk about because those are the days that are going to be coming up as we get before my next video for your high temperatures. But then here we go, let's just look at trends. By Wednesday into Thursday, what you notice, warm up towards even at the 40s as far north as the mid-Atlantic by Thursday. That's what would force any snow we get that day deeper into the interior northeast. There's your huge cool down coming even and trying to shield its way down into the central plains. That indicates that we've got that big low pressure system coming, and it's going to take this general trajectory right there. And that's what could lead to those big snow totals in the Midwest, including Chicago. I'll be keeping you updated on all of that, of course, as we get closer. With that being said, though, that is all I have to say for today's video. If you want more consistent, accurate, and educational forecasts in the future, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button right down below, as well as sharing this out with family and friends during this active time. That'll help me get towards those milestones of 9,000 and 10,000, which are not very far away. Other than that, though, that's all I got to say, and I'll see you right here next time at
One Nation Web.